Good afternoon, everyone. I am Taylor Rothwell, reporting from Channel 17 News. And today I will be your inside source to the closing statements at the Arapahoe County Courthouse. The trial for the Aurora theater shooter has been underway for weeks, and today I will be giving you a first-hand glimpse of the final verdict. If my sources are correct, streaming will begin right before the expert witness is called to the stand to be questioned. Brittany Allen is the lead forensic psychologist on the case, and after completing a mental evaluation of the shooter, she will now be questioned on her findings and a verdict will be reached. This has been the largest pool of jurors in history, beginning at 9,000 potential jurors and dwindling down to the final 12 that will determine the shooter's fate today. The prosecution will try to undermine the defense and their plea to prove that the shooter was legally sane before, during, and after the shooting. Live streaming from Channel 17 begins now.
All rise for the Honorable Judge Carlos Zamora Jr.
Good afternoon. You all may be seated. Okay, let the record reflect that the defendant is present along with the counsel for defense. Are both sides ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor. All right, we're going to give this stage prosecution district. George Brockler, you may proceed.
Your Honor, we would like to begin by calling James Holmes to the stand to simply reiterate what we've already discovered this far in the proceedings.
All right, the state of Colorado calls defendant James Holmes to the stand. District Attorney, the floor is yours.
Mr. Holmes, just a few simple questions to refresh the memories of the jury. Were you in the care of psychiatrist Dr. Lynn Fenton at the time of the crime?
No.
But you were in her care prior to July 20th, 2012.
Yes.
And when that stopped, did you threaten Dr. Fenton?
Depends what you mean threaten. Yeah.
Objection, Your Honor.
Objection overruled. Proceed, Mr. Brockler.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, Mr. Holmes, did you send a journal to Dr. Fenton's address?
Yes.
And what did you write in that journal, Mr. Holmes?
I wrote what did I want to do to people.
And what is it that you wanted to do? Fair enough. Moving forward, did you purchase all of the artillery and explosives that you were armed with the night of July 20th, 2012?
Yes.
And were the final results of July 20, 2012 what you originally intended for?
I don't know, prosecutor. Why don't you tell me?
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, defense, would you like to question your client?
No, Your Honor.
All right, Officer Paulson and Officer Acosta, could you please assist the defendant back to his seat? Prosecution, how would you like to proceed?
Your Honor, we would like to call our final expert witness to the stand, forensic psychologist Dr. Brittany Allen. Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Allen, thank you so much for being with us today. I understand that you completed the mental evaluation of the defendant prior to the trial.
Yes, Mr. Brockler. I completed the evaluation as of February 16th, 2015.
Thank you, Dr. Allen. And what did you discover?
Well, for starters, Mr. Holmes is no doubt a very disturbed man, but I believe that he's aware of what has been happening. Mr. Holmes was diagnosed with dysphoric mania, which I believe to be a valid diagnosis.
And for those in the courtroom who may not know, could you please define the term dysphoric mania for us?
Dysphoric mania cannot be so easily defined. It is an extreme form of bipolar disorder characterized by a combination of symptoms ranging from depression to mania. Someone who suffers from dysphoric mania is usually extremely emotionally unstable and may experience heightened mood swings throughout their days.
Is this disorder something that would render the defendant unconscious to his actions at any time?
In my personal opinion and thorough research that I've conducted, I do not believe so, Mr. Brockler.
Thank you, Dr. Allen. The defendant mailed his personal journal filled with homicidal thoughts to the psychiatrist that he was seeing at some point prior to the event of July 20th, 2012. Were you able to see this journal?
Yes, actually, I was able to examine it. In all honesty, it was every disturbing thought that I would expect. I've seen it many times before in some of my psychopathic clients I've previously worked with.
So are you saying that you believe the defendant to be a psychopath?
Objection, Your Honor. Leading question.
Objection cited. Next question, Mr. Brockler.
Apologies, Your Honor. Dr. Allen, you are aware that the defendant rigged his apartment with explosives on the night of July 20th, 2012, correct?
Yes, I am aware, Mr. Brockler. I spoke with a couple officers from the Aurora Police Department who dealt with the apartment firsthand, and Mr. Holmes did inform me as well.
And what did you learn from those officers?
Well, one officer who did not want to be identified said that if the bombs would have detonated as planned, it would have been catastrophic. He rigged the entire apartment as a means for distraction in an attempt to carry out his plans to the full extent. Stephen Foster, a former police officer with APD, recognized it as classic military tactic. You create a diversion, and during the confusion, you can have a higher level of impact in wounding people.
Thank you so much for that information, Dr. Allen. The defendant has obviously attracted a lot of attention to himself, but are you familiar with the growing fan base of this man calling themselves the homies?
Actually, I'm extremely familiar with this group. I've done a significant amount of research in hybristophilia, rather the Bonnie and Clyde syndrome. It is potentially dangerous sexual expression by women who are drawn to murderous men. I've noticed that a large amount of this group is made up of teenage girls, some of who I was able to actually speak with, and they showed no shame whatsoever. There's a local group of some of these followers who flew out a couple more girls from Germany, to my understanding. These girls went to the old residence of Mr. Holmes that we mentioned before, and they were allowed in by the people residing there presently. The girls proceeded to tour the home and even cleaned out a drain in the shower in an attempt to get some remnants from the apartment's prior resident. In my opinion, the defendant has received an alarming amount of attention, which he seems to be pleased with.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Daniel King, from the defense, would you like to question the witness?
Absolutely. Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Dr. Allen. I would like to begin with Dr. Lynn Fenton. Are you aware that Dr. Fenton specialized in schizophrenia?
Yes, I am aware.
Furthermore, are you aware that schizophrenics often experience hallucinations and sometimes believe to hear voices that may or may not tell them what to do?
With all due respect, Mr. King, of course I am familiar with schizophrenia. I'm a forensic psychologist after all, and I can see where you're going with this. I was able to speak one-on-one with Dr. Fenton, and she was also known for her expert research done in the field of bipolar disorders, which, like I mentioned just a little bit ago, is what Mr. Holmes was diagnosed with. He had dysphoric mania, not schizophrenia.
Fair enough. Dr. Allen, did the defendant speak with you about the many difficulties he had making friends, as well as his liking in the Department of Women?
Yes, we had multiple conversations on the subject.
Well, Dr. Allen, wouldn't you believe this to be due to his mental instability?
Absolutely not. Mr. Holmes is definitely unstable, but the question is not whether he is stable or not. The question is whether he is aware of his actions and the consequences that they bring. As for his social issues, were you never a teenage boy, Mr. King? Most people encounter trouble making friends or awkwardness with the opposite sex at least once in their lifetime, and most people get through it, but Mr. Holmes was an exception. Every individual's brain works differently and develops at different rates. The situations we go through and how we handle them mold us into the human beings we become, and James Holmes did not want to accept the rejection he felt from women and his peers.
Whatever you say, Dr. Allen. On July 20th, 2012, when the defendant was apprehended, he sat in his holding cell using the gloves on his hands as puppets and referring to himself as Joker. I would consider that to be the actions of someone delusional. Wouldn't you, Dr. Allen?
In some cases, Mr. King, yes, I might consider it, but it's not that simple. Batman paraphernalia was found in the apartment of Mr. Holmes, which shows us that he was no stranger to the hero or to the villains that come along with. The Joker is a beloved villain in the popular trilogy, and he's received praise from all over the world. He is graciously loved by many, being reincarnated again and again through the t-shirts people wear, the repetitive Halloween costumes, and even the tattoos dedicated to the villain. The character was known for being crazy and murderous, yet he was still adored, which attracted the defendant.
Forgive me, Dr. Allen, but that does not entirely make sense. Why would anybody who's legally sane be attracted to that heinous character?
Oh, he's perfectly sane and aware of his actions, which is precisely why he chose the exact time and date of the massacre. The midnight release of the long-awaited Dark Knight Rises film, he knew those theaters would be absolutely full of people and that it would bring the ultimate destruction. Mr. Holmes felt that he had done all the right things in life, and he still was not rewarded for it. He excelled in his neuroscience major, and he had been accepted into a prestigious doctoral program here in Colorado. He had his own apartment and his own car, but he still received no love or no recognition. When he came to the realization that being the good guy wasn't going to get him the attention he felt he deserved, he decided that he had to become the bad guy. And it worked. We spoke previously of his fan base calling themselves the homies, and Mr. Holmes was clearly trying to hide his excitement.
Very well, Dr. Allen. No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, well, if that's it for both sides, Dr. Allen, I would be interested to hear your final statement before we release the jury for deliberation.
Thank you, Your Honor. James Holmes is not criminally insane. He is psychopathic. There's a thin line between the two, but the most important difference is one of competency. It is my belief that Mr. Holmes was completely aware of the crime he was committing, along with the pain he would be causing. He simply did not care. Psychopaths are cold-hearted, and they have a lack of consciousness for everything, yet they're completely aware of their actions. They either lack an emotion or they're completely incapable of feeling emotion at all, which causes them to lash out. Psychopaths often have no sense of responsibility, and they are likely to blame other circumstances, just as the defendant is blaming his non-existent insanity. They are violent, selfish, and overconfident, which describes him pretty clearly, in my opinion. According to the sources inside of the jail, the defendant has been living the lavish life as far as prison goes. Thanks to his actions early on, Mr. Holmes landed himself in a nice solitary cell, sheltered from any bodily harm that could come his way from other prisoners. Not only that, but his homies have all been very busy pouring money into his commissary, which has now reached the hundred thousands. A mental institution is out of the question, as life in prison without parole should be. Either way, he's living, and living not too shabbily at that. This man took 12 lives and forever changed hundreds more. He stole away mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, and daughters, and for that he must be punished. An eye for an eye is the only justice I see coming. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, folks, we're going to take a short recess and allow the jury to deliberate. When we come back, the verdict will be in. Welcome back, everyone. It has come to my attention that the decision has been reached. Please, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. We, the jury, have come to the decision in the case of James Egan Holmes. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty on all charges.
Order in the court. I would like to make the official and complete the sentences now. James Egan Holmes, you have been found guilty on all charges, and you will be punished by death. Officer Acosta and Officer Paulson, please get him out of here.